Malay, why don't we start with, so we've seen this transition. The last decade, anyone here who's followed technology has watched a transition from conversations around enterprise AI to November, that magical moment, November 2022, where ChatGPT was opened up to the public and we all experienced Gen AI, to now this movement this year, Agentic AI, which people want to talk about. You can't walk up and down the promenade without seeing agent used all over. We'll talk about how Salesforce uses it, but what has precipitated that transition, and how does Wipro think about, as organizations are looking at this, what that means both internally as well as to their clients?
Thanks, Josh. Good to see you all. Good afternoon. So I know AI and Gen AI and Agentic can mean many things to many people. We're still trying to find a common nomenclature around some of these terms. But if I may sort of put it in time frame view, somewhere after the core robotic and automation and RP and others evolved these terms of technology, if roughly around mid 2005 up until maybe 2015. We started experiencing a version of AI. In Wipro, we launched something called Homes in 2015 with the idea that that was AI, which is now we call enterprise AI. As you rightly said, in November or October 22, we all got a new name to it. But in reality, some of us in tech had started working on Gen AI, right? We did some research work, started building some bots around it. I see Agentic is a next stage of that journey. At least from a Wipro standpoint, and companies like us who are systems integrators, tech and ops consulting companies, we see Agentic AI providing us a platform to scale the rollout of AI and the value that we create. What we realized over the last 26 odd months is while every company wanted to do something with Gen AI, the outcome was questionable. The quantification of outcome, value delivery at scale was still being questioned. A lot of POCs happened, a lot of good use cases were built. Obviously, it's a phenomenal technology, made us a lot more productive, but we were not seeing at scale implementation of it. The way we see it with Agentic is we have now a workflow definition of learnability of the agent. We have the ability potentially to have a bank of agents. They can collaborate with each other and at some point be fully autonomous systems. And I see personally, I see the value of that technology a lot more in middle back office, where Gen AI perhaps was a little bit more on the front end side of business processes. So I think the pace of change, especially for our customers, could accelerate in 2025 and beyond. Obviously, it's not it's not a short-term solution. It's going to be a long journey. But for us, we're super excited with the potential that new technology presents.
And at some point, you use the word autonomous, and I think it's an interesting one because last year I felt like the conversation in Davos was about Microsoft Copilot, right, and assisting people. We're starting to see autonomous systems, and obviously as we get to the workforce conversation, I think that'll be super important. Lori, so Salesforce, right, has a long history of providing productivity tools into organizations, right? From moving from spreadsheets to a cloud CRM, marketing, MarTech stack. How is Salesforce and the role, thinking about again this shift, and what does it mean both to Salesforce internally using Agentic AI as well as externally your clients?
Yeah, so for us, when I think about it from a talent perspective, so it's that agentic layer that's sitting on top of our platform and that ability to build and deploy tools at scale. And we would say autonomous, but not necessarily independent. So you're autonomous, but you're still collaborating. And so I think what we're learning is where are those skills where the agents really excel and do best, and what are those skills where you still have that human partnership or that integration, right? That seamless handoff that allows you to take the best of both and maximize it to support your business. And so, early days, but I think what we're learning from a talent perspective is hands-on keyboard, understanding those use cases are really helping us understand at a faster rate so that we can actually figure out what those best opportunities are.
Again, there's gonna be things we're gonna come back to. The word skills even, we had a conversation this morning about reskilling and upskilling. That's how we're gonna solve the problem of these displaced workers. And I said to someone, what are those skills? Like, tell me so I understand that. And no one was able to articulate it. I think you had a point of view that I wanna get back to, because I think that as we do displace workers in the short term, we need to be thinking about, right, as societal entities, not just, delivering to our shareholders higher value, what do we need to do? Umesh, for those unfamiliar with Unifor, why don't you give quickly a overview of what your company does?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to both of you. And as we share here different experiences, different thoughts, of course I'll talk about Unifor. One of the things I hope we take away, this is a nice crowd, is if we all leave this room agreeing with each other, we wouldn't have done our job. So this is really the time in a new transition, new technology emerging. We need to be debating new things and learning from new ideas. Unifor is an enterprise AI company. I founded this company 17 years ago, so overnight success. And I promise everyone, conversational AI in the year 2008 was nowhere close to what it is today. There was no LLM, there was no ChatGPT. Matter of fact, when me and my co-founder started developing this technology, the AI models were such that getting one English word to be recognized by a speech-to-text algorithm was about 7 weeks of effort before we could deliver it to a customer. All the way from that point to today, where Unifor is an end-to-end enterprise AI platform. We work with about 2,000 large enterprises in the world, private unicorn, about 250 million in ARR, growing pretty fast. So what does an end-to-end enterprise AI platform mean? It means that we think of AI in the enterprise as a 4-layer cake, all right? That's how we think of it. It's not edible. I promise you can't eat it, but it's a 4-layer cake. The bottommost layer of this cake is the data layer, where each enterprise is beginning to think about the core intellectual property they have. What will differentiate one retailer from the other, one pharma from the other, is how well they manage their data, and then use the data in the next layer, which is what's called the knowledge layer. So now you take your data, structured or unstructured, images, PDFs, what have you, and put it through an AI system, it's called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. And basically you're converting your data in a form where you can now ask questions. Why did I lose sale to that competitor last month? Why did our HR compensation not keep up with the market, etc.? You can start asking questions. So that's extracting knowledge from your data. That's the second layer. Once you do this, you can now pick your favorite LLM out there in the market. Open source, proprietary, OpenAI, Gemini, Meta, Llama, all those options. You pick what's your favorite, large model, medium model, and you point it to this knowledge, your company's knowledge. And now these models very quickly are becoming your enterprise's own version of this LLM, right? So what our biggest companies started to do, they've said, look, it's going to be a fool's errand to try and manage these big models. So we're going to make them tiny and deep. We're going to teach them each function. We're going to teach them recruiting. We're going to teach them, if I'm a telecom company, billing. If I'm a financial CFO, we'll teach FP&A. So functionally oriented SLMs, small language models, trained on the company's data. So that layer, the next layer, is the model layer. You have a plethora of these SLMs, and they all have to be managed and traffic managed. And the final layer on top, which feeds from the company's data to the knowledge to the model, the final layer is where rubber hits the road. That's where real ROI is coming up, and that's the agentic layer. This is like the new app layer, right?
Yeah.
And Salesforce has led the way in showing us what was a SaaS application just a couple of years ago, is now an intelligent decision-making layer, which is called an agent, right? But it's trained on the company's data.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I think in that, when we talked about that move from proof of concept, MVP to scale, two of the things I think that Umesh mentioned, one was data and one was ROI, right? So obviously companies made some investments into these POCs and maybe weren't data ready, didn't realize how hard it is to get their data out of their sort of different systems, if they needed to structure it. They also didn't probably realize what that long-term investment was, the total cost of ownership of building their own systems and models. What have you seen organizationally as some of that sort of hesitance in scaling AI? What have the problems been? Has it been a people problem? Has it been a data problem? Has it been an investment problem?
All three of them, I guess. Most organizations jumped into Gen AI, I guess, in 22, thinking that's a silver bullet. Board members are asking, hey, CTO, CIO, what are you doing about it? So they rushed into answers. But as Umesh said, the key was, if you don't have team data, you don't have a good outcome. I guess, so that clearly it was about organizing your data, appreciating that it is true oil and it can give you value in long term, and it is proprietary that you should keep it within your four walls. Second was people. I guess it is not only a tech transformation, it's a people organization change transformation, and many companies realize that after a few attempts on the POCs to say, you know what, I have a good tool, but I don't have people using it, or there isn't learning involved in it, and there's different skills involved in that. So it is about learning development, training, and various other opportunities around it. And lastly, you need to change your business from an OCM standpoint. You need to change your processes. It's not a tech tool to business. It's businesses need to bring in a new automation or AI or agent to help them run their business better, faster. So it was a process change, and for us it was about advising companies where we operate to help them understand that they have to have this classic triangle managed well in order to get the best ROI out of an initiative like this.
So, Lori, obviously the people part it is important, is teaching people to operate differently in time, and this is both inside and externally, right? So it's your own employees, how they engage with the systems, as well as potentially teaching and guiding your customers in how to interface differently. Talk a little about, from a perspective of Salesforce, how you're taking your employees along and your customers along on that journey to really embracing and utilizing. Because to Malane's point, if you build a system that no one's using internally, you're never going to get the budget to scale it.
That's right.
So how do you think about teaching an organization? How many employees at Salesforce?
70,000?
How do you take 70,000 people across all different functions
That's right.
to start to learn and embrace it?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of different things. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. As the products evolve, as they get better, the talent needs to evolve with it, right? I think that's something with this shift that there isn't that option. I think it has to happen because those ways of working are just going to get better as we work together. So I think, we think about it in a couple of different ways. It's a tops down and a bottoms up. So some of it, to your exact point, is what is that business strategy? Where do you actually need to deploy? So if I use the use case, I'm a manager looking at how I'm going to distribute my work, and I say, okay, I can extend my capacity through agents. Okay, then there's some specialized, maybe some white glove service I want to provide through these trusted relationships with the sales leaders that are partnering with that customer. And then there's just continued evolvement of the platform, of the data that just keeps getting better. And so if I'm a great leader, I'm going to look across this and say, what are the skills my agents are going to provide? What are the things that are, again, specialized to the teams that I have? And then where is my technology continuing to evolve? And the best leaders are going to be able to scale and think about efficiency in the way they distribute that work, because all of those different areas have different skills. I'll do it in quotes, because it's almost not skills like we've talked about skills traditionally. It's going to take different skills. So we talk about at a very individual level. So tops down is looking at it that way, kind of the macro. How do you do your workforce planning? How do you think about your investments in your teams and the skills you need to fill the gaps? But then at an individual employee level, what are the skills I have today? How do I future-proof my own career? How do I understand what my paths might be based on the technology? And then where do I actually need to figure out what those career pathways are? And I think what we're trying to do is blend the both. How do we bring it together and say, how do we redesign the work in such a way that we understand through technology what are the skills? So we've got a career agent as an example that helps us understand what are the skills that are trending down, what are the skills that are trending up, how do we serve some of our trailhead content to those folks that might want to invest in new skills areas or build new certifications. And then for those folks that maybe they're not quite sure, they're feeling some uncertainty, they want certainty, well, guess what? Here's the jobs. Let's serve up to you through the agent, can share with you the jobs that you have skills for that maybe you never thought, I should be a salesperson, I'm in customer support, maybe I'm gonna go into sales. They might not have ever thought about the career path, but when you think about the Venn diagram of those skills, there's a lot of overlap and a lot of opportunity. And so it's been an interesting unlock. I think honestly, I'm not sure we went into it knowing those things, but there's certainly things that we're learning as we start to have our teams really working hand in hand with those agents.
And did you see any specific places where there was resistance? Where there was resistance to, I know you're telling me I should do these things,
Yes.
but.
Well, look, people are people, so let's be clear. There's some really interesting Slack research that we have with these sort of like 5 personas, and you're always gonna have your early adopters who jump in. There's gonna be those folks who are like, oh, no way, that's cheating, I'm not gonna get involved. But what we found is that we've been doing a lot of activations in our offices that have been about hands-on keyboards. So with agents, because you can build them yourself, leveraging data you're familiar with, what we've been doing is giving them sort of business-specific use cases, something that's familiar to them, and say, build an agent. Let's build it. We've got a trailhead, you can build it in 20 minutes, and they can see what it's like. And what we found is it's sort of like the pennies start dropping with the ideas of, okay, I can actually see where this works. By the way, they can also see where it doesn't work, and they're like, okay, I can, this is where they're gonna need me. This is where, the tool is amazing, I can't do that, but wow, I can be more efficient over here. And so what we really found turned the corner for some of that resistance. And again, I think we'll continue to have it, that's just human nature. But I think how we're combating that is really hands-on keyboards, people practicing, really thinking about business relevant use cases that are familiar to them. And that seems to sort of bring the stress down. I mean, I think there's still a lot of unknowns, but it does create some familiarity.
Ramesh, one of the things we talked about, I asked you the question of across your 2,000 customers, where are you seeing either by industry vertical or B2B versus B2C, where are you seeing the most scale and adoption? You had a point of view on that wasn't the characteristic that defined success. Talk a little about where you see the most success.
Yeah, so look, first of all, building on everything that's been said already, the framework that I'm beginning to like, and I tell my customers to think about in terms of starting with AI, is a 10-20-70 framework. What is that? Invest 10% of your time and mental energy in picking the technology or your partner, because quite frankly, we've come a long way in 2 years, and there's a lot of options out there. Spend another 20% time thinking through systems in your company. Don't just do a point solution. Like get your data ready, get those platforms ready, so that if the first thing works, you're ready to scale it up to 13 other things. But the 70% of the time is back to people. It's org design, it's people. And sometimes CEOs of companies ask me, Umesh, technology is great, we understand, like we've identified 6 use cases with you all, and we'll do agents, but I'm worried about speed of implementation. What should I do about org design in my company? Should I create like a parallel structure, AI first, and like kill the company approach, so let it come up and displace my business? And my answer usually is create an empowered tiger team. A small number of people reporting right up to the CEO who are allowed to run through walls and drive this change. So to your point, where are we seeing real scale implementations and success stories emerge versus where are we struggling with, stuck in POC? I don't see a big distinction at this moment between industry types. We've got customers in financial services, big banks, insurance, telecom, retail, healthcare, you name it. Now I will say there is a geographical, difference emerging. US in the lead, no doubt. Europe, about 8-9 months behind US, and Asia similar. So from a geographic standpoint, this is not one where we see a big gap between, innovation happening in US versus Asia picking up. There is a, year and a half gap, which in the long term means nothing. Where I do see a big difference of success versus not is quality of leadership at this moment in time matters more than ever. This is a technology in transition. Understanding is emerging. And I will say the role of the CEO has never been more pronounced. Where we have CEOs driving these decisions and making mandates to the teams, coming out with clear goals. Not just let's do a demo to the board next week, but I'm signing up by end of 25, I want 30% efficiency in marketing, I want my logistics costs to go down by 10%, and I want to run 7 times more campaigns this year with the same money. Those are goals defined, now go make it happen, right? So wherever we are seeing CEOs make this decision and get deeply involved, choosing the partner, picking the platform, really beginning to understand the nuance, because those smart CEOs know this is going to be the future of their business, right? And that's the key.
Well, are you seeing a similar, like, are you seeing that at the CEO level, I remember years ago, I think it was the Sony hack, where someone said, cyber is now a boardroom decision, right? It's a boardroom topic. It seems like all these topics are being sort of debated at the board level and the CEO. Are you seeing a similar, that the CEO mandate and sort of the CEO getting involved is really driving success?
Yeah, I would say, I was reflecting on what happened soon after October 22, where every, head office corridor was a CIO or CTO running into you and say, hey, what do you guys do in Gen AI? Can you do something for me? It's because board was asking that question. I think that hype died down a little bit, but to Umesh's point, wherever the CEO kept the sponsorship of that initiative, they are seeing better outcome. Those who delegated it to the CTO or CIO and assumed that will get done without giving them obviously the budgets as well, it was tough for them to create that impact. So to his point, yes, wherever there was CEO sponsorship, you get obviously greater result. And with Agentic, it becomes even more pronounced. Because Agentic outcomes not about just tech intervention in a small pocket, it's business sponsorship. If you're getting a better campaign results out from a marketing, you need marketing to own that program with tech supporting it. Right? It can't be the other way around. So it's a bigger transformation, but much bigger opportunity. Only thing I'll add there is ROI or investment was an issue with just a Gen AI based implementation. With Agentic, at least the way we see it, we can, because we run ops and tech together, in those relationships we can commit to the outcomes of 60-70% savings by looking at tech plus ops transformation and underwriting some of the benefits that customers have. So at least that part of the investment or CapEx issue should hopefully die down for some of our large customers.
So I do want to shift now really into the people part, into this idea of displacement. It's not anything new, right? We've talked about many, from the steam engine displacing, sort of people shoveling coal, to a PC on every desk, to, mobile. But the future work, I felt, sort of got a little boring, and then, wow, a global pandemic happens, and work changes. And then, a year later, now we're talking about Gen AI. Are you seeing a radical change where, we've talked about technology transforming work, that we're literally at a new place where this will impact just about everyone. And now when we start to talk about skills, retraining call center workers that may be displaced, what are those skills that we have to start sort of teaching a next generation as well as people currently in the workforce?
Yeah, when I think about some of this, it's interesting because I think the CEOs, as you were talking about, they have the impact on the investments you're making in the technology and the talent at the same time, because I think you do need both. I agree with that transformation. But from an adoption perspective, it's those first line managers, right, that are setting the tone for their teams, whether or not they actually adopt or maximize the use of all of this technology, and what, and how much autonomy people get to build those skills or change those skills. And so, but I would say right now, agility and actually understanding how is the job actually changing and evolving based on the technology, or based on the skills of the agentic layer that you've implemented. Because I think for some areas, we've got our help.salesforce.com. And so we're learning a lot right now about, again, where do customers really taking advantage of the skill sets of the agentic layer and the tools that are available? And then where do they really need a different level or a different kind of engagement with the teams that have been supporting them for a long time, or the trust that's been built with those teams? And how do they work in tandem so that actually at the end of the day, the customer is getting the best result, by leveraging the best skills from the agentic layer and the best skills that the teams have to offer. And I think where we've seen customers take the best advantage of that mix of skills is where we're seeing the best results right now. And again, I think it's early days, we're all evolving and learning, and I think from a skills perspective, having that flexibility and agility, and really understanding that, I guess as an organization, what are those transfer of skills? I was talking earlier about your example of customer support. Well, customer support folks have technical skills, they know your customers, they know your products, and so we're working with those folks to say, okay, you might actually be great in the account executive space. You already know our systems, you can get great benefit back to cost. You can say, why am I gonna go get someone that I'm gonna hire off the street that doesn't know my products as well, may or may not know my technology, and definitely doesn't know how things get done in the company? Well, if I can take someone who knows all those things, and maybe, I'm not scaling an apple to an orange, I'm, scaling a navel orange to a mandarin orange, right? And so it's this nuance, but they have a running start. And so it's a faster
Because there's a real
ramp.
cost to hiring from the outside and training.
Absolutely, ramp time, skilling, and if you're talking about displacement, you're also talking about severance cost. And so if you take all of those things and say, well, actually, no, I can take you through, by the way, the boot camps that already exist for these other programs. We're already starting to see this great success, and there's amazing familiarity because these folks know your customers. And so that's been a really great use case. Others are, again, out into technology areas, whether it's developers or your internal technology teams, or again, your solution engineers. There's this core product knowledge that we found is really transferable. The thing is, it's not been very natural in the workplace. Some workplaces are better than others in this agility or internal mobility. And so we've really focused on how do we create the pathways, maybe even the ones that aren't as obvious, through technology, serving up those different roles and those different areas so that people actually become curious again about where they want to take their careers. And I think the ones that are the most curious and kind of, again, hands on keyboards, jumping in with 2 feet, it may or may not change the outcomes of where they sit today, but they will be in a better position by the mere fact that they've invested in themselves and they've taken advantage of these programs that so many companies are offering today.
So you mentioned job creation, right? So obviously there's companies like yours that are thriving and hiring. So bringing new people, obviously all the companies in the Gen AI, Agentic AI space. At the same time, your customers are potentially replacing workers, or as there's natural attrition, not hiring as much. Where are you seeing the opportunity for job creation? We could all talk about that. New jobs will be created by this technology. We've been saying that about every technology. But where do you see, real jobs, being created potentially for displaced workers?
Well, I think this is a topic that's very close to my heart. Matter of fact, just a few hours ago, I'd written a blog that World Economic Forum has published about how do managers and companies need to navigate this environment with the impact of AI. And fundamentally, choice amongst every business leader and government leader with AI and agentic AI is the following. With AI, do you want to do same with much less? Or do you want to do a lot more with same? I think that's a very fundamental question. And as I have been thinking a lot about this topic, I think in the balance, as a society, as economies, it's going to be about let's do a lot more with same. And we don't have to look too far. On my right, Salesforce has come out and announced they're growing gangbusters, but they won't be increasing their headcount as they have in the past. And this is the impact of AI that it's going to have on companies and countries. So where does that lead all of us? Which means that we are going to see an age of abundance. An age of abundance for companies, free cash flows are going to go up, EBITDA margins are going to go up. An age of abundance eventually for all of us as well, as people. A 3-day work week is going to be a reality. However, the path to that point isn't a straight line. And that's where we all need to very aggressively come together and worry about it. There will be in the very near term job displacements. And once again, a lot of people overestimate what this technology will do in the near term. Like, since last Davos, there's a lot of talk about AI. There will be some disappointments, some POCs will not succeed, and it will lead to a good place, which is called the valley of disillusionment. It's actually a good thing, because realism will set in. But then most people will make the mistake of underestimating what happens after that. I bet you by the time we meet here next year, we would have a proliferation of AI agents in several different companies, and call center workers or sales workers or marketing workers, people who work in agencies that generate content, all those jobs are going to get displaced at a very fast pace in the medium term. All right? And so, are there jobs going to be created? Absolutely. If you think about, you run an agency that generates marketing content and you get $10,000 paid for one project you do per company. Now for that $10,000, using LLMs or Gen AIs or Agentics, your agency should be doing a lot more for your clients. And that's the reskilling that's needed at an entrepreneurial level, at a skill set level. All these AI companies, LLM companies, chip companies, AI agent companies, they will be adding headcount, net new, but they will need new types of headcount. Prompt engineering, we've spoken about this skill for a while. There still aren't enough prompt engineering people trained in the world. These models will have to be trained on images and voice and languages and documents for each industry, for each company. And all those new skills are going to be net new producers of jobs. But the worry we all must have is that in the very near term, there's going to be a period where some companies are start to either reduce headcount or not as much as they have been in the past. Meanwhile, some other companies will be in dire need for new skills. And there's going to be this mismatch in the marketplace. All right? And that's happening because we overestimate what happens in the near term and radically underestimate what this will do in the medium term.
So a lot of this relies on the responsibility of business. Obviously, we could talk about the regulation and government and their role, but we probably won't do that today. But you know, it is responsibility of business. Wipro has a long history of, obviously, with the foundation, building mission and purpose into its core, about serving people. You know, talk a little about, as a company, thinking about that, right? Because you know, in a world where shareholder value is king, we could deliver it just to our shareholders and create higher returns versus reinvesting that in our employees. But talk about the responsibility of a company and all these things we're talking about. It is a shift. A 3-day work week sounds great, but does that mean the company wants to pay you, you know, 3/5 of what they once paid you? You know, so how do you think about the responsibility of the company to do these things, to help with the skills mismatch, to bring them up level, knowing that they may leave then and go to a different company? But how do you think that as the responsibility of business?
Well, a quick refresher, right? 70% of our profits go for social good. So I guess purpose is so crucial for us as an organization. I'm sure there are many more like us. So you know, responsibility towards our 250,000 colleagues globally is very core to what. But there's also a belief that every new tech disruption creates new opportunities, new jobs. I think key is to reskill and having that mindset to learn, providing our workforce tools to tools to learn. I mean, we were, whilst waiting for the panel to start, both of us found that our kids are same age, right, similar backgrounds. And when I was pushing my son to get into computing, right, I thought it was the best thing to do. But my elder son, who passed a couple of years earlier, like hers, did math, and he thinks he's in a better place now, right, rather than guy who's learning coding. But I'm sure if these kids who come into the workforce now have the ability to learn and understand, we will. And I have a very personal view or explanation to it. When I started, C++, linear programming was the best thing in the world. But by the time I was gaining some experience, it was Java, so totally disrupted. And we thought C++ guys would not have a career. 5 years later, we needed 2 times more C++ engineers than we needed when I started. So I have no doubt that as the society gets more productive, we will need more workforce to do it. We may have some displacement, as others are saying, but it's about how we pivot our workforce. So mindset is critical from my standpoint. And as a society or as an organization, it's our responsibility to make sure that we do what is right for long-term good for the communities we operate.
I think the other interesting thing, just to build on what you just said, is how many of us have had an actual linear career? There are very few careers that actually go in one straight line. And so it's funny, we're talking about reskilling. It's like, oh my goodness, we've all been reskilling our whole careers. And so it's sort of an interesting, like, how do we normalize it in a way, take it out of the sort of context we're in today, and just, you know, if you talk to people about what is your career mosaic, what have been the things that have, you know, lined up your career, the relationships you've had, the technologies you've learned. I mean, you just gave a great example. And when you start to humanize it like that through real experiences, I also think it gets a little less scary. It's still real, very real, all the examples you just gave, but I think sometimes we, also like humans, we make it very dramatic, and sometimes it's actually just the things we've been doing for a very long time. We just have to figure out how we connect those dots,
Right.
so that, you know, we don't lose sight, right, and get so lost in the
I
narrative.
guess the question is, you know, sitting in a room like this, we're in Davos, you know, it's an amazing group of people. I would agree that the people in this room probably have had that,
Yeah.
right? How do we rethink labor that may come up through a traditional path, may not have a college degree, you know, and you know, is really being affected, right? I think there's a conversation that happens in rooms like this, and then there's the conversations that also we look at more broadly. But I am an optimist. I think most of us here probably are. So I do want to leave on a high note and ask each of you to sort of give, sort of in closing, what are you optimistic about? What are you excited? What do you see? You know, it used to be over the next 5-10 years, I think we could all probably say, what do you see in the next year really that excites you about the art of the possible and how this will impact both business and society for good? I'm going to end with you, so we'll start with Umesh.
Well, I'm an optimist, otherwise I wouldn't be an entrepreneur for 17 years. By definition, I see glass half full all the time. So, you know, I'm a true believer in this concept of we are truly entering an age of abundance. There are two major things occurring in the world this week which are going to be pivotal on what happens in the year 2025. One is this, a World Economic Forum Davos, all of us here, all the conversations, the decisions, the policy shaping that happens here. And the second happened yesterday in America. A new government is in the seat. Lots of policy changes are going to occur, and they're all going to have pivotal impact on the pace of innovation, pace of AI, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, when we meet here next year, what should we be talking about, or what would we be talking about? When we come back here in 2026 in Davos, it is my firm belief that we will be starting to talk about how these agents, AI agents, have started to deliver dramatically more with same for companies, for departments, for managers, countries, and individuals. And I think, like I said, along the way, will we have some bumps? Will we have some learnings? Will we have some diving catches here or there? Absolutely. And this is where all of our role, the media's role to be vigilant and keep us honest, enterprise, individuals, entrepreneurs, all of us have a role, because this is truly in our lifetime that, you know, society shaping event, and this technology is that powerful and it's moving that fast that we can't be asleep at the wheel. But we will have a great 2026 Davos conversation about that.
Great.
I love that. So I'm also an optimist. I don't know, you might have a panel of optimists here. We'll see if you're going to stick with it too. But I guess I'm very bullish. You know, one of the things I'm very excited about is so much of this, by the way, none of us know how to do. We're all sort of bumbling our way, trying to figure it out. And to me, that opens the door to fair access. And so I'm not sure, we were just talking about our son's college degrees. I'm not sure the college degree is going to tell them how to be a better prompt engineer,
Yeah.
or even how to best work or manage agents in teams together. And so does that start to create this opportunity for greater access where people can lean into some of the certifications and some of the free access that companies are providing today, because we are all in this great need for all of us to learn, and so many of our companies are creating this openness. And so how do we help people understand that there's choice? This doesn't have to be deterministic. It actually can be a choice of where you want to go and how much you want to activate and lean into this work. And so my prediction is, or what I'm going to be really focused on is, how do we help people understand the opportunity in front of them? Let's not let the door close. Let's actually push the door wide open. and really lock arms to really drive that adoption, get more hands-on experiences so that people can really see the opportunity in front of them, and they really jump in with 2 feet instead of jumping back 10 feet. So that's what I hope we're talking about next year.
Great. Can you take us out?
I'd say cautiously optimist. The cautious part is because we didn't talk enough about it, is the the responsible AI part of it, the trust and safety and governance aspect of it.
Very good point.
Right? Folks who rush into it without understanding that there could be other implications of that technology will have challenges more than the others. So that guardrail is so critical. I think by the time we get here again in a year's time, we would have better appreciation of some of those frameworks.
Yeah.
We would have implemented in many. I do think that has to be done before we take the leap, head first. So in crawl, walk, run, if we were crawling for, before 22, we are walking, we are starting to run now with this technology. I think, as Umesh said, by this time next year, there will be many more startups with verticalized agents who are solving very specific industry problems. The opportunity for us in the enterprises will be how do we embed in our environment, making sure that we are creating a safe and sound environment for the customers of ours.
Great. We'll look forward to reconvening next year, seeing where we stand. I think to your point, there's a lot of learnings. I mean, the ethical, responsible AI question has been on the minds of people for a decade. We'll see now where it falls. Obviously, America and the EU have taken different approaches. We'll see under the new administration also the approach that it takes. But again, I think we could all see that we'll hopefully benefit from this. Want to thank everyone for joining us. Thanks to the great panelists. Thank you to Wipro, to Malay, to Laura, to Nicole, to Francesca, and everyone for helping put this together. We're going to break. Please join us for some wine. Get to meet the panelists out front, and thank you again.